This is the 217 Recovery Podcast with Corey Winfield.
Stuff went numb that shouldn't go numb, you know what I'm saying? I was like, what is going on?
No, I don't.
No, you don't.
And co-host Marnie Winfield.
It was kind of an awkward thing. He's like, would you guys want to come along? Can you get away to come to the island? I'm like, yeah, we just got back from there.
It is the 25th of October, 2022. My name is Corey Winfield, and Marnie said, I don't feel like doing it tonight. Do it yourself. So I said, yes, ma'am. That's what I'll do. Now, joining me tonight, though, I'm doing it, and I invited some people, some guests on our Discord channel, and I have my buddy Adam, who goes by Prozac, Sonic Prozac, and he can explain that in just a second, but he's up on the stage. Got Brandon listening in. Appreciate that. But Discord is kind of different, and a lot of people are kind of new to it. I was new to it until like a month or so ago, and then I was like, oh, I kind of like this, and it's fun. You know, you can get on here. You can be in your pajamas. You can be at work, cleaning up, just listening in. You can do that too. But it's a way for us to like invite people on the podcast because
that's really cool.
Yeah, Marnie's mom, who doesn't listen to the podcast, was like, you guys need to take callers. You need to have callers on. I'm like, well, it's a podcast. We don't really do callers. But this is a way where we can actually interact with people who do listen. So if you're listening now and it's later, well, you missed it. But join us on Discord. And then in the future, I think it sends you a message, doesn't it? Saying, hey, these guys are live now.
Well, it sent me a link to an invite, and then I just followed the invite. And then it wasn't until I waited around for you to show up at like 8 o'clock, I thought. And then I got a link from you, and I followed the link.
Oh, okay.
That's how I did it.
So, but I think it just will pop up sometimes because the guys that I follow in Dallas, Gordon Keith, he's awesome. He has one where every Saturday at 10, you know, and I normally forget, but then it like just sends me a reminder. It's like, hey, he's going live on the stage. So it's pretty cool though.
That's cool.
Yeah, sorry I wasn't on right at 8 there, Adam, but I was talking at the treatment center in town, and I didn't have an idea. I didn't have any idea what I was going to talk about when I was driving there, and this is the case most of the time. And then I say a little prayer to God. I was like, God, give me something to talk about, you know, because I don't really know what to talk about.
That's right.
And when I got there, I still didn't know what to talk about. So I just kind of started talking about my story a little bit and how it's crazy that things will happen to you in your life. And at the time you can think like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Like, how can I come back from this? And then you do come back from it. And then you look back at it and you realize what you learned from those lessons that you went through, you know, in those dark times, those hard times. And I told the guys, I used to pray, you know, I was in the hospital bed. I'd be laying in bed, you know, detoxing, whatever, withdrawing. And I would pray, God, like, let this be, like, let me figure this out. Let this be a lesson. Like, let me figure it out. I want to be sober. Like, why can't I do it? And then the last time I prayed to God was when I was in jail. And I said, God, let that be the last drink I ever take. And that was the last drink I ever took. So it's kind of maybe sometimes how you pray about it. But me saying, God, let me figure this out. Show me how to do it. He did. He showed me how to do it. But he took me down the long, hard road. And I'm glad he did. You know, like I was telling those guys tonight, like I wouldn't be able to come to a treatment center and talk to those people. Like if I just would have got it right the first time and just quit drinking, I wouldn't have had
no story.
Yeah, I would have no dark, hard times to go through, you know, and to see their faces and to see the places that they're at. I get it. I know, been there. And I think there's something to that. So I don't look back and go, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I wouldn't have done this. And I told them something that I tell people often is that I'm glad I took that last drink when I did. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't have been sent to a 90-day program. I would have probably been offered outpatient again. I wouldn't have met my wife. I wouldn't be talking to you on this podcast. Never met you. Never met Brandon. I never would have met a lot of people. So I'm glad I did. I mean, a lot of people are like, what? Like, you're glad you got drunk that last time? Yeah, because it gave me the consequences that I needed, you know, and it all happens for a reason.
It does all happen for a reason.
And it's not up to us to understand why. You know, a lot of people have a hard time with that. They're like, why would God put me through this? Why would I? Why? It's not up to us to understand why. You know, it'll all make sense in the end. You know, you just have to trust God and move forward. And for a lot of people, that's hard to do. You know, a lot of people, I don't believe in God. Okay, whatever, man. You know, like
Right.
that's you. And I don't probably believe in the same God that a lot of people do. But whatever God you believe in, you know, like just believe in it's there. And sometimes I think it's aliens. But that could be God. Who knows, man? And some people could say, no, God can't be aliens. Why not? God's everything, right?
It's everything.
You know, maybe God made the aliens who made us, but God controls them still. You know, like
Everything, one God.
mm-hmm.
I know for me, it seems like the farther I get along in recovery, the content of my prayer changes. Because it used to be, Lord, get me out of this foxhole prayers. Get me out,
Yeah.
Lord, just make me feel better. Lord, help me out this one time, and I promise. I had all kind of deals with God that I never kept.
I'll never rob a bank again. Wait, hold on.
You know, so I totally understand that, and for me, it takes prayer. It does. You have to pray. You have to believe. When I first got into recovery, I didn't believe. I couldn't say God. I used to call him Bob at the end of the meeting. Instead of saying God grant me his serenity, I'd say Bob grant me his serenity. And that's how distant I was from God. You know, but without God, I couldn't. My recovery wouldn't be possible.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. If you think about the little situations or the hard times that you were in, I remember when you called me once and you were drinking in a truck, and you sounded horrible, man. And I kept trying to give you hope, trying to give you faith, man. Like, just keep on doing the best thing that you can do, you know. And it's hard to talk to somebody in those situations too, because when you're in it that deep and when you're sitting there in a truck, so I think you were sleeping in your truck, maybe.
I was living down by the river for a minute.
Yeah, like it's hard to give somebody hope in those situations, you know. But
It took what it took. Like you said, I had to go through those dark times.
mhm.
That's part of it. That's where drinking led me. You know, I mean, it doesn't lead everybody to go live down by the river, but it sure did me. You know, and that's part of my dark times. But looking back on that, like you were talking about, looking back on that, I see so many life lessons.
Mhm.
I see maturity and a growth that I didn't have at the time. And I'm still working on it, but
Yeah, even sober living. Like if I would have asked you at those times, you know, at Nathan's house, you were at Nathan's house with me for like a week, I think, and then I moved on. But like looking back, for me, it was great. You know, like there was good times. In Nathan's house was a nice, clean house. You know, Jason had his rules, but they were there for a reason. And looking back at it, it's like, man, that was a good thing that I did. You know, I'm glad I went through that program. If you would have asked me at the time, I said this in the last podcast, like I would have said, hell no, I didn't like it. It was horrible.
right.
I don't like living with 16 dudes, but I was there to have a good time in recovery. I was there to have fun in recovery. And Jason was about that. You know, he was like, look, you can have fun in recovery. You can have fun sober. And
Right.
so I was like, hell yeah, we can. And so he didn't say, you guys are having too much fun. He never said that. You know, he knew we were having fun. And I was afraid when he found out about the podcast, I was afraid he was going to say, you can't do the podcast here. But we weren't talking about people in the house. We were talking about our recovery, our days, you know, stuff we went through. So he didn't really care. And he knew that we were having fun with it. And he was the first person, I think, that told me, like, people listen to your podcast and it helps them. And I was like, what? Like, I was strictly selfish with it. I was doing it for me. You know, I was doing it for my recovery. I didn't care if one person listened, if 100 people listened. I didn't care. And when he said that, you know, that was my service work. And you remember living at Nathan's house, you had to have a service position. You know, you couldn't just live in sober living. You actually had to volunteer. You had to go places and do things. And
Be active.
yeah, it got you off the couch and it got you involved in the community. And I think that's very important for people, you know, in early recovery. And whether it's an hour a week, whatever, you know, do something for somebody else.
Do you remember on the wall what it used to say on the wall over at Nathan's house
I don't.
about doing the next right thing?
No.
Yeah, it was on the mirror. Do the deal.
Oh,
Do you remember that?
yeah, I never did the deal.
Do the deal.
I never did the deal, but other people did. And Jason would tell you, no, I did the deal. But there was one guy in there that was always like, do the deal. And he was like scum, and I didn't like him. So that made me not want to do the deal. I was like, I'm not doing the deal. I'm not doing the deal. But no, those rules that hit in place and that structure and just the volunteering of it, and like I said, I would go to food banks and I would volunteer there, and other guys would be like, oh, I make coffee at the meeting. I pick up chairs at the meeting. And I'm like, well, that's whoop-de-doo. But hey, it's something, I guess. And then it got to me, and I still didn't have a service position. And I was like, well, and he's like, well, you're doing the podcast, right? And then it was like that, oh shit moment. I'm like, what? He knows about that? And I was like, yeah, I'm doing that. And he's like, that helps people. It's like, people listen to that, and that really does help them. And I was like, oh, does it? So you're cool with that. And here I am in the sober living house, all these guys, and like most of them hated on me because they just, I don't know, they were just like, who's this guy and what's he doing with this podcast? And one of the dudes knew I was in radio. So he was like, oh yeah, you used to work in Kalamazoo. You're my uncle's favorite. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And then he asked to be on it, and I said, no, you can't be on the podcast. and then he turned back into a hater again. But yeah, so for me, that was like a big moment, because he's going to allow me to do the podcast while I'm in sober living, and that he supported it. And the fact that he said other people listen to it and it helps them. I was like, what? I'm just talking about my recovery. Like I said, I was very selfish with it, and I was only doing it to help me at the time. So.
Well, it's a selfish program.
Yeah. And it is. And I suggest people, worry about themselves and be selfish about it. And if people that you're bringing in your life or around you aren't on the same page, and there's no really need to have them around. There's family members of mine that, man, when I first went to treatment, or when I went to treatment for the last time, and I got out and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm doing sober living up there. I know for a fact that they were like snickering at each other going, yeah, give that a couple weeks and we'll see how that works out. And then I come home the next summer and they're like, oh yeah, I'll just wait. And then I pass the year, and they're like, oh, well, now that he's got a year, he thinks he's hot shit, and watch this. And like my aunt passed away, and I had a couple family members didn't even talk to me. And I'm like, are you afraid recovery is going to like catch on to you or something? Like, I don't know. It's like they hated me when I drank, and now they hate me because I don't drink, or, like even family members, man, some will wait for you to fail,
Yes, they do.
That's a done thing, and there's nothing you can do about that. But Care Bear, should we see if Care Bear wants to join the podcast?
Yeah, let's see.
Okay. I'll invite Care Bear to speak. Of course, again, we're on Discord as well, and I like it. I'm still pretty new to it.
I'm brand new to it,
but it's kind of fun, and it gives people that listen a chance to join the podcast. And Care Bear, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well.
I just thought I'd check this out.
Okay. I didn't know if you wanted to join the podcast. Brandon's just listening. You can listen if you want, but if you want to share something or talk, feel free.
Okay. Yeah, I just thought I would check it out and see what you guys were talking about. I got out of work a little late tonight, so I couldn't hit Jacob's Well. So this happened to give me a notification. I was going to go on and look for a virtual meeting.
Ah.
Yeah. I thought I'd check it out.
Okay. Well, thanks for checking it out, and I'll put you back down there and you can listen. Yeah, we were talking about how God kind of works, and how things in life just kind of come along, and we don't know why it's happening at the time, but we can look back at it later and go, wow, I'm glad that happened. I think I mentioned in the last podcast too about my aunt when she called me to take her to her doctor appointment, and I said, yeah, I'll do that. And how that kind of set me up for taking people to and from treatment. Like if I didn't do that, like I wouldn't have thought, oh yeah, I can take people to treatment. And it's just one of those little things that happen in life that at the time, it was just such a simple yes or no. Like if I would have said no, I wouldn't be here. It's so crazy how just one decision, doing something good, can set things in motion that you don't even see coming. Like there's no way in hell I would have been like, yeah, I'm going to take people to and from treatment, and then we're going to help people out, and that's going to keep me sober. Not in a million years.
Looking back, it's the things that we don't see that make the trip worth it, though. I don't know. It's looking back at my darkest point, I couldn't have seen a way through it. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm saying I think God just kind of lights the path one way or another, man. It works out. I'm so thankful for recovery because I don't know where I'd be. I'd probably be dead.
And sometimes even the things that don't work out. And by that, I mean, there was a time where when we started this transportation thing, we were getting people to and from treatment. We had to go through and we had to try to get a license or get registered through the state somehow. And I found out that was a pretty simple process. Just give the state like $150. But the problem was you had to have this certain type of insurance, and they told me it was going to cost $15,000 a year. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
Like we're not we're not set up to make millions of dollars here. We're taking one person at a time. We're not taking busloads of people. Like, what are you talking about? And I wanted to just run through a wall. I was so frustrated. And then it was brought to my attention that you can go through DHHS and do like this other stuff and get, certified for non-emergency medical transportation. And I thought, oh, okay.
There's another way.
Yeah. And I wanted to go through this other thing too. And we would have got paid like pennies on the dollar for what it, like pretty much some organization was going to get the money. And I was pissed that they had denied me for that.
Right.
But it all happens for a reason, and at the time I was frustrated and pissed off, and so sometimes when things don't go our way, the way we want them to go, there might be a reason for that, so don't get too butthurt, don't get too bent out of shape. Just kind of look for those other doors, look for those other pathways. If you want to make something happen, you can still make it happen. It's just not that way.
There's always another way, it seems like.
If that makes any sense.
Find a way.
To me, it makes sense, but it's coming out of my brain, so I don't know if it makes sense to other people. I don't have Marnie here to like give me the evil eye.
Makes sense to me.
Or to say, "Shut up, you're stupid."
I'm a poor excuse for Marnie, but it makes sense to me.
You got to be harder on me, Scott. Jesus, Adam. Sorry, I see Sonic Prozac, your screen name, and now you're Scott. So, no, it was a good meeting tonight, though. It always makes me feel good when I leave that place. And the guys are laughing and they're smiling. And when I walk in, it's crazy. I ask, how's everybody doing? And I had one guy say, oh, it was going great until now, And I thought, oh, because I'm here. And he's like, no, I just dropped a piece of paper. And people were kind of in a down mood. And then when I leave, everybody's laughing, cracking jokes. And, I asked them, I was like, when's the last time you guys laughed this hard? And they're like, not in a while. And it's like, good. Like it feels good to laugh and you can have fun in recovery.
I remember them guys. I remember a couple guys coming to the treatment center when I was there and giving open talks. And it was like that. It was really well, it was well received, and it was something that we needed. And we all kind of took little bits and pieces of it away with us, but there's definitely a need for it.
Yeah. And I'm glad that the treatment center lets me come.
Yeah.
And talk, and I'm not a staff member, so I don't have, I don't want to say that I don't have to follow the rules, but I can talk to them like they probably can't, like I can go in there. I don't get anything from it. I'm not paid. I get selfish stuff from it. I stay sober from it, but I don't get paid for it. I don't get anything like that, but I go there and it's the way I give back, and I get to talk to some people and give them a little hope and inspiration, but I can talk to them and they know that I'm not bullshitting them. There's no agenda for me. I don't even really talk about my podcast. I'm not like, listen to the podcast, and they're always wanting me to give them sweatshirts and hats. They're like, your gear is so awesome. I'm like, yeah, it is pretty awesome. But anybody can get a free shirt. I've talked about that a lot on the podcast. Like I have a contest at 217recovery.com, but the secret is everybody who signs up wins. I should just put that on there. Just get a shirt for free. But it sounds better to win one.
You're doing a podcast?
Whoa. Uh-oh. Well, let's unpack that. Why was she so bitter about that?
Oh, she couldn't hear me, that's all.
She sounded like she was going to give you a talking to later.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Whoa. All right, Adam. I don't want you getting in trouble, man.
No, I'm not going to get in trouble.
All right, that's good. That is good, man. So you have started your own podcast. We had you on last week. And how is the process of starting a podcast going? What's that like?
Well, there's a learning curve. I'll tell you that. trying to get the mics together.
Okay.
And trying to get everything to work right and get the board set up, and it's been a learning curve, but it's fun. I enjoy it.
Okay. Now, if somebody were to ask you, if you were to do, because you've done 2 episodes, I've listened to them both. If somebody were to ask you, what advice would you give them for starting one from the ground zero?
I would say just do the first one. Do the very first one.
Well, it only took you a couple of years.
Yeah, it took a couple of years.
Yeah.
But I got the first one done.
Yep. And then I would say for you can grow and learn from there. You know, and whether you're starting a podcast about your recovery, about cooking, you know, there's people out there that cook for a living, and there's people out there that do whatever. You know, this one lady was on Facebook the other day, and she wanted to start an adults only podcast. I think she wanted to do sex stuff or something.
Right,
hey,
dirty stuff.
Probably like, yeah. So, hey, more power to you if that's your thing. But yeah, getting that first one out of the way, that's the hardest one. Because then you got it done. And then you can only get better, I would assume. I mean, I'm sure some shows have gotten worse, but you at least have a base where you can go, well, I could do this better. I could do this better. I need to maybe do that. I have an intro. Yeah, but just do it. You know, and
working all the software and trying to get it all together, it's a lot of fun doing that, and doing the podcast is fun too. And just being honest. Being honest with the microphone, that's the biggest thing. If I could tell somebody, just have to be honest to the microphone.
Yeah, and we used to do ours, like I said, in that sober living home where there's a bunch of dudes, and we would be in the middle of it. And I wasn't a big fan of editing it and doing all that jazz. So what it was is what it was. Sometimes people come walking in the room all loud, and we just like, yo, man, what's up? And we would just kind of make it a thing. And I know you had a bird that was kind of going off in yours. I was like, well, make it a part of it, you know? But a lot of people would probably think, well, if I mess up, I need to start and stop and if you mess up bad enough, you know, sure, start it over and give it another shot. But, you know, just keep rolling with it, man.
For me, as long as the content is there, I'll keep rolling.
Because nobody's perfect. And
nobody's perfect.
I think when people hear mistakes, I mess up a lot on the podcast. Sometimes I can't talk. I'll start talking and it'll just be like, that happened the other day. I think it happens every episode. And I was just like, yeah, never mind. No, I just leave it in there. Like, whatever. I don't know. Some people would probably say you should edit that out, but it just makes it real, man. Like, sometimes I just can't talk.
Right. Well, it's honest.
Yeah. They used to pay me to talk on the radio, and I always thought that was kind of a crazy thing. Paying a guy who can't talk.
That is crazy.
But I hear a lot of bad people on the radio now. I just can't listen to the radio now, man. Except for the station out of Dallas.
I never listen to the radio. Never do. I listen to a lot of music though, but it's music that we own, so I'm constantly playing music and listening to stuff, but never on the radio.
You know what I think would be cool, but I don't think we would. Well, I mean, we could do it if we had the funding. If we had, and maybe there's something like this already that exists, but if we had like the Recovery Podcast Network, because there's a feature on Spreaker where you can have live 24/7. It's like,
that's cool.
$1 billion or something.
Oh, I'm sure.
Maybe it's like 1,000.
Sell a kidney.
I don't know. It's a lot more money than I want to shell out, but if we did it professionally, like set it up like everybody had their own show, that could be interesting, you know. And if we use like actual funding from it, like this is my thing, like this is my, like I said, this is my podcast. I do this to keep myself sober, and if people listen, that's great, you know. But if we had like a recovery podcast network that was actually funded through a certain source, then I would run it as like a business almost. I would run it more professionally. If that makes any sense.
I understand that.
You know, then it would be cool. Like, hey, Adam, your show's once a week or once a day, and you could do them from anywhere. You know, that's the beauty of it too, is you could do it from your home, and we could, like, if we did it professionally like that, everybody gets the same mic, everybody gets the same board. You know, your show is every day from 3 to 5. You know, and I would work with everybody and say, hey, look, this is how you build a show. This is how we do this. This is how we do that. And I would set everybody up to win and to be successful. I mean, it could be done.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea.
Maybe I should.
And I think you'd build a network. Like, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah. But what do you do? And here's a question. You know, say I give, Pete a show, and Pete does 7 to 9. Well, Pete doesn't show up for a show. Pete relapsed. I would want to keep Pete on.
Right.
I wouldn't want him on drunk, but hey, you know what? There's no FCC rules online, so maybe he does it drunk, and then you play the tape back for him and go, "That's what you did, bro. Have a good show tomorrow. Good luck."
I think it would matter where he was at after the drink. Because for me, if I had one, I'd keep going.
Yeah.
There'd be no podcast.
Yeah, I guess you're right. You know, you probably want to get some help. Like, yeah, because, that's, we're off to the races, you know, and if somebody picks up again and starts using again, like maybe they can pull it together for one show or 2 shows, but you know it's not going to be very long before it's a dumpster fire. So,
yeah,
there might need to be, okay, you get a week off, but I wouldn't want to fire the guy. If Pete's a guy, Pete could be a woman.
I guess.
You know, I definitely would want them to come back to go, look, you know, like, you got to keep telling your story, bro. Like,
yeah,
explain that one to your audience.
I went to an open talk once.
That's awesome. How'd that go?
The speaker had just freshly relapsed, and that was an interesting discussion. So I can see your point.
Yeah, there was one somebody did recently that I heard about where he didn't tell anybody until he got there, and he's like, "Yeah, I relapsed yesterday," and they're like, "What?" Like, I can't remember too much about it, but I remember somebody saying that happened. I was like,
Yeah, yep, it happened.
What was your feeling for being in the audience? Were you like,
No, it was just a different perspective because at the time I was newly sober. And so it was like the thought of relapse terrified the hell out of me. And so I listened intently to everything that this guy said. You know what I mean? And he said some great things. You know, he did. And it was his point of view being fresh from what he had just done. And there were people in the room that didn't agree with him even being on the stage. But
now I remember the story clearer. And I just think it was that dude. I wasn't a big fan of that guy.
Right on.
Like the stuff that came out of his mouth. There's 2 types of people, man. There's the talkers and then there's the doers. That dude was a talker. He's going to tell you about how he's great and how everything he does is wonderful, but he's not actually doing the things that are going to get him to be the person that he's telling everybody he's going to be or that he is. Like when I'm going to start a podcast. I told people when I was in treatment I was going to start a podcast. Then I got out of treatment and I started a podcast. And then I said, well, I'm going to start taking people to treatment. I wasn't running around for 2 years telling people I'm going to take people to treatment. I started taking people to treatment. You know, I figured out how to do it, and I'm going to make a movie. That one I've been saying for a couple of years, but that one though, that is going to happen though, and it's going to be great. It's going to be fun. It's going to be crazy, but those are things that I want to do, and
those are good goals.
Yeah, and I do them, and now I have a camera. I have 2, sort of, my phone, but like I have stuff that I can actually. I'm working towards it. You know, like making movies, you can't just, at least on my budget of 0, go out and just start buying a bunch of stuff and make a movie. But you got to build up. But I will. I got a director's chair.
It's a start.
It's got to start somewhere, man. Can't make a movie without a director's chair. Everybody knows that.
Gotta have a director's chair. Does it say director?
No, it could though. I got cricket.
Totally could. Got a cricket.
It holds T-shirts right now, but one day, one day it'll hold me in a camera.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I believe that dream with you.
thanks, bro. I appreciate that. You can be in the movie.
Yeah, man. Cool.
Yeah, anybody want to be in the movie? Just let me know. Make that happen. But I think about it a lot and all the time. So those are things. I'm just saying. But there are people that do that. They talk and and that's why I told Marnie and you might have been there too at the same treatment center when I would tell people, and I heard it from someone else, and he said, find the people that are doing good shit and stick by them.
Yep.
Do what they're doing. And when I was telling Marnie that we couldn't hang out and I was trying to kick her to the curb, I wasn't kicking her to the curb, but I was just like, hey, I don't think we can be hanging out, And she's like, well, you're the one that tells us to find people that are doing good shit and stick with them, stick with the winners, And I was like, damn.
Threw your own advice back at you.
Yeah, she did, which was really good. I'm glad that we're together and I'm glad that all that happened. And again, even that story of us, like that's pretty crazy. And like how I was like, no, she's only got 4 months clean, and I had just gotten a year, and I was like, there's no way, I don't want to be the problem that gets in the way of her and her sobriety. And I told her that, and she said, oh, that's cute that you think so highly of yourself, but you're not going to be the reason I relapse. And I was like, wait, what?
Good answer.
That's what I want. That's what I'm talking about. And I was like, well, let's get back together. And she's like, no. I was like, damn. She's like, I'm not just a booty call. I'm like, no, I don't want just a booty call, And she's like, well, I'm pregnant.
Now look at you.
I was like, you're pregnant? Like, oh my God, that's great. And that kind of brought us together. And then we had the miscarriage, and that sucked, man. It really did. Yeah. But it had a purpose. That baby, even though it didn't make it to this world, it had a purpose. It brought us back together, like got us closer and put us back on the right path. I tell people, I'm like God answered my prayers, and I'm praying, hey God, I want to meet a woman that, is worthy of my love and that I really love and enjoy. Please put her in my life. And then he does. And I'm like, no, I can't do it. No, all these rules that, people have, and no, I can't do that. And then he's like, no, man, get back over here. I put it right here for you. And now you're just saying you don't want it. Like, what are you talking about? And I think that was his way of seeing me go down the wrong path and just picking me up and going, no, over here, stupid.
Pay attention.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. And I was like, oh, okay. And like I said, that it was hard, going through that. But looking back at it, it's like, okay, if we would have had a baby and it was supposed to be twins, it would have been like, oh my gosh, would I have been able to do the things that God wanted me to do? I don't think so. I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing today. I would have babies, like when you have a family, when you have kids, it takes a lot to raise them. So I've heard. And diapers apparently cost a lot of money, and formula, and just time and energy. And would I have been able to drop things at a minute's notice to take somebody to treatment? No. Would Marnie be able to go back to school and finish up her stuff? Probably not. Would she have been able to advance in her career within the company she works for? Probably not. So it's like, looking back, it's like, okay, yeah, it all happened like it was supposed to, and I don't blame God. A lot of people, oh, why did you do that? And no, I don't blame God for that. I think it's kind of works out supposed to. And like I said earlier, it's not up to us to figure out why things happen. You'll drive yourself crazy. Just know that
because from your singularity point of view, you can't see a pattern. You can't see a pattern.
No. I'm like, God, why did the radio station fire me for getting help for being depressed? Why'd that happen, God? Why you let that happen? Why did my whole life get ruined? That's what I used to think. Like, I ruined my whole career by coming back home to Michigan.
Yeah.
No. That was part of the plan.
The whole time.
Yeah, and part of that was very humbling, and it really that's deflated the ego. Maybe, I don't know. Like, it brought me back down to earth, back to reality. people in radio would tell you, oh, you've never been in radio till you've been fired. And I'm like, well, I've been in radio 20 years, never been fired. You know, I was like, you guys just suck. And, then I get fired for getting help for being depressed. And I was like, this is fucking nuts. Like, are you kidding me? Like, how does this happen? Like, God, why? Well, that's part of the plan. It wasn't up to me to understand why this is happening. Just know that it is and go along with it.
Don't fight it.
Nope. And all those prayers of, God, let me figure this out. He was letting me figure it out. And like I said, it wasn't until I prayed that last time about God, please let that be the last drink I ever take. So far, so good,
For me, it took getting baptized. That's what it did for me. I don't know. It changed. Everything changed. It was like the compulsion to drink was gone. It was just gone. And it's been gone ever since. I still have the alcoholic mind, but the compulsion is gone.
Yeah, it gets easier.
It's a beautiful thing. And I'm able to live.
You start replacing. I talked about that tonight at the treatment center. You got to replace that. Like, you live that old lifestyle, and then you stop living it, but then you're like stuck in the middle of nowhere. Well, you got to find something, whether it's a career. Sometimes I started 217 Recovery. I started a podcast, started a business. That took the place of all the other crap. But until you replace that, until you can find a purpose, I think it keeps a lot of people stuck in the middle, and they're just like, well, what do I do? What do I do? And then you kind of like, well, I know this one, like I compare it to ex-relationships a lot of time, like, that girl's bad for you, that guy's bad for you, but at least you know him. I can go back to him, but if once you get that new girlfriend, that new boyfriend, you replace it and you're like, why was I with that piece of crap anyway? Like, why was I with them? That person was no good for me and I knew it. Why would I put up with that? Well, until you find that something new, you're just going to keep going through that same, keeping yourself stuck, and I don't know, it's probably different for everybody, what they do and what they find to replace the drinking or the using, but until you find it, man, it's going to be tough. Pray. Pray. For me, it was a lot of the time, it's music. I love music. I love playing music. And when I need to go somewhere and do something, I go to my guitar. When I feel restless, I go to my guitar. And it works for me. And it has worked for me. Now you started a podcast. Look at you. And now, you told me you spent a lot of time like learning stuff and reading stuff and learning new programs and learning about microphones. That takes time.
Yes.
And it takes learning and dedication, and it's fun and it's exciting, and you got dreams. And the first podcast we did, if you want to go back on the app, the 217 Recovery app, and listen to it, you'll hear me say, I want to have a badass studio one day. And the guys kind of laugh. Ha ha ha.
Right.
I had a vision, man. And I'm sure you had that same vision where you're like, oh, I want these badass microphones. Right now, they cost like $400 or $500, and you're looking at them and you're like, oh, damn. Well, I'll get them this spring, you said. Like, there's a plan in place. Like Tyrone, he's saving up to buy a car next June. And he's been saving for a few months. It takes time sometimes, and he knows that in June he's going to buy a car, and he's going to have enough money where he thinks is going to be enough to buy the kind of car he wants. And, same thing for you. If you can save up here and there, ask people at Christmas, hey, throw in some money from a microphone fund, those are different things that you can do. But you'll have that because you have a vision for it. You see it in your mind. Like, you want this badass board. You want these badass microphones. You want nice shit.
I do.
There's no reason you can't have that. We started with a microphone that cost $29. One microphone, 3 guys. And I would pass it to each guy. That's all I could afford. And we got a website that was an app. But I knew how to kind of play with Photoshop and stuff. So I made the app into... It's more, and a lot of people would look at the website and go, that's a nice website. And I'm like, yeah, it's an app that I use, and I just drag and drop things, but it was $9 a month, and that's all I could afford.
Right.
We had that baby for almost a year, and until I think my mom spotted me some money, and then I used that, and I think I paid her back when I got my student loans or something, but like, that's what I had to do, and that's how we had to start, but go back and listen to those early podcasts, and they sound way different. And even a year ago when we had other microphones, like we kept increasing, and you listen to them and you'll hear the difference and the quality of them. And it's like, oh, okay. And now our microphones are pretty nice. I have a nice board. I have a nice studio. I have exactly what I wanted, so it just takes time.
Only in recovery.
Yeah. And a vision. And being clean and sober. So
have a vision.
People can laugh at you. They can laugh at your dreams. Let them laugh, man. And then when you see them in a couple of years and they don't talk to you, just know that, hey, maybe they're just some haters now. That's pretty much all you can say. But
haters gonna hate.
Haters gonna hate, man. But you just got to keep on doing what you need to do. And those are your dreams, man. Some people just are not going to understand them, and that's fine. It's your dream. Those are your visions. So keep pushing forward, my man, and you'll have all that stuff that you want. And that goes for everybody. Not everybody's going to understand your dreams, and just keep doing what you need to do, pushing through.
Amen to that.
All right. Well, that will wrap up tonight's podcast. Thanks for joining me there, Adam, and
thanks for having me.
Brandon was in the audience. Appreciate you in attendance tonight, and Care Bear was in the audience as well. And I think this is something maybe we'll do every Tuesday. Just jump on and let people kind of jump on and talk or listen kind of to the podcast live. So
I think it's a cool idea.
Thanks for listening to the 217 Recovery Podcast. Win a bunch of free shit from 217 Recovery. Go to the app or the website, 217recovery.com.